Do those, is that something we should look at for us or something?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, seems like we have enough people to get us started. So I motion that we start or open our meeting. Yep.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Alrighty. First item we have is our meeting minutes from the last meeting on November 20th. Go ahead and if anybody has anything to discuss about it.
over the weekend that I would bring up a point that he had raised. I think he reached out to some of the people on the committee besides me. I don't know, he knows obviously who he was able to get to and who he wasn't able to get to. But it was his opinion that rather than having his draft go to me for review and revision before it went to the rest of the committee, we should just be looking at his draft and attempting to mark it up on the spot here. I think that his concern was for, pure objectivity and having no member of the committee seeing anything early. On the other hand, my impression has always been that it is the secretary's role to prepare the minutes, and, I am in fact supposed to be getting the draft early so that I can revise them before they go to you all. But I did promise him after this discussion that I would raise the point and, I will throw it out for discussion. But the other point before I do that is, you have my draft. I also printed out one copy of the original draft if anybody's curious about it. I can pass that around. It's around here someplace. But, I have been concerned off and on about whether our minutes are as detailed as would perhaps be helpful. And, I myself think that since this is something that people are going to be relying on when they look to see what we've done, it would perhaps be helpful if we had a little bit more detail. And certainly anybody who becomes aware of anything that is in a draft that they feel is not covered fully, specifics of who said what when, I personally would welcome having that kind of detail added to these things before we approve them going forward. And, I wanted to make that point before we got to the broader discussion too. Just that we might want to consider attempting to get more detail to the minutes, because what we're doing now, it's, I think, a reasonable overall summary, but, for instance, the discussion points are raised as, the committee discussed, as opposed to, what each of us said attributed to who said them. And that's not always important, but some of the time I think that it can be useful to have that kind of memorialization of a conversation. And, I'm sure that one of the reasons this isn't there is that, Ryan has been doing these minutes for the city council for ages and ages. Those meetings run for hours. If you put that kind of detail into their minutes, you would die. Nobody could do it. And I think this accurately reflects what has been the practice at the city council level. And, I really, as secretary, wanted to get a sense of whether we felt that it was an appropriate level of detail for us.
Mr. Chairman, who composed this? Is this Ryan's? This is the one of minutes of,
Yeah, I think they both have the same header. My version is somewhat longer than his. But here, if I give it a quick look, I can tell you. Okay, this is Ryan's.
Okay, this is Ryan's. Okay.
And at least I think, or maybe it's not. I take it back. Let me. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes, this is mine. I take it back. I'm sorry. And I will find Ryan's, which is somewhere in my pile of papers here. It may be. That looks like my paper.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, do you guys have a copy?
No, I only made the one copy. I'm sorry.
Next time, send it to him to make copies,
Well,
so we can all look at it.
yeah, no, it's Ryan's draft, so he has copies. I made the one copy because I wasn't sure what had been circulated to whom, and yeah,
I'm sorry I'm late, but I'm lost. But
yeah.
we're
Okay, no,
discussing.
let me back up a little. Over the weekend, Ryan had asked whether I and I think a few other members of the committee felt it was appropriate for me to be reviewing the draft minutes that he prepared and revising them prior to circulation to the rest of the group for further revision and review. And his feeling was, this is the clerk's job, and an improper degree of influence is potentially entered if some member of the committee is reviewing ahead of time and before the draft goes out to everyone else. My counter argument there is, this is what a secretary does. This is, my elected job, and I'm signing these things. So I do kind of have to review them no matter how we handle it. And certainly, both of us agree that any corrections, neither of us has a problem with amending these drafts. It's just a matter of whether his first draft should go to everybody initially and we should all sit and talk about it, or whether I should continue to review them and rewrite as needed and then circulate for discussion and further correction as needed.
If I can say something, actually what we should get at the meeting, actually what we should get here at the meeting is the final minutes, not drafts. We should not be getting drafts. And then we can still make corrections to it, even though it's the final minutes. But we should not be getting drafts. It's between, I believe, you and Ryan to figure out what's the final minutes and then present them to us here at the meeting for us to look at. Or you could send it to us ahead of time if you want for us to review. And then then at the meeting, then you ask, is there any corrections or anything that needs to be done? And we make those. And
okay, I think that's just a terminology thing, because what you're describing to me is what I would call a draft. I mean, yes, it should be as final as possible, but if you can still make amendments to it, it's a draft.
It shouldn't be called a draft. Shouldn't call it a draft. It's the final minutes that you present at the meeting. For the meeting, Yeah. I mean, there's no...
Yeah, but we would still be...
Between you and Ryan, it's a draft, but not to us.
Yeah. No, but when it gets to you, if you're going to make corrections...
That's okay. It's still your final presentation to the minutes of the meeting. It should be...
Yeah, no, I agree that it should be as final as we can get it. Mm-hmm. But as I say, I think that this is a terminology thing, because to me, unless everyone has finally voted for it and it's sealed and there are no more changes, it's the draft. And we're just talking past each other.
Right.
It's just a word.
Yes, but it shouldn't say on the agenda that it's a draft. When we get it, it's the minutes, and then we review them and make any corrections. I mean, I've never been to a meeting where the agenda has draft minutes.
But I think you guys are talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
The question is, what level of detail are you going to come to the meeting with?
Yeah, and that is...
That's up to you guys.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to bring to the committee, because we've done a couple of rounds of drafts. We've had prior minutes approved, and I am concerned that we're not capturing enough detail for real memorialization of what's happening in our meetings. I would be happy to be overruled on this, mind you. It'll be more work to add more detail, but...
So, I'm comfortable with the amount of detail that everybody feels captures what we discussed with the least amount of effort between you and Ryan.
Yes, it should be between you and Ryan. That should decide on what you want to put into the minutes.
Okay.
These meetings are archived, on the internet, so...
Are you on speaker?
No, but
We got to get everybody.
I'm just saying, there's an archive.
Anybody that speaks, you got to speak into the speaker.
Well, I was just saying that these meetings are all archived on the internet, so, I mean, I'd be happy to put more detail in it. I've actually been asked to do less detail on council meetings, so I can certainly do that and send it to Mimi, and we can just go forward that way if that works for everybody.
So what you're saying is, in addition to your summary, the minutes that you guys are providing, there is a word-for-word archive of this that exists?
Yes, yes.
I think that's sufficient.
Okay, I love it.
And I could go to the law department and send them some of these minutes just to make sure, we're covering all aspects of open meeting law and, just to get a ruling from that and maybe make that official on the record too, just to...
Yeah, no, I'm not concerned about the legal ramifications of what we're doing. I just, I know that sometimes people want to know what a given body has done in the past. They go to the minutes to try to find out, and sometimes minutes are very helpful and sometimes they're not. And I do think that we've done a reasonable job of capturing the substance of our discussions here. But, I did, before we just continued on our merry way, want to make sure that the rest of the committee was equally comfortable.
Yes, thank you, Mimi. So, are there any suggestions with the current minutes as they stand?
I would make a motion to accept the minutes of the previous meeting.
Second?
Did we get these on? Did we read them yet? I didn't even read it yet. Did we get these before the meeting?
You-
No, I printed it out, we can put it there, so
So,
maybe
yeah.
you want to table it.
No, we don't
Yeah.
have to table it. We can just look at it real quick.
Yeah, well, and while you all read it, Ryan and I just need to coordinate better so that, he's not sending them to me on the Friday before a meeting and I'm not revising them the Monday before a meeting, so that everybody has
Also,
more
in the
time.
future, we could circulate these prior to these meetings so we can all read them.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's a timing issue. If we had both been a couple of days ahead, you all would have had them on Friday.
Okay.
And that's just a matter of managing our workflow so it happens. Poor Ryan has many hats to wear.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I second Mr. Sullivan's motion to accept the minutes, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item 2, we have somebody with us from the tax department to discuss informational mailings with their tax bills.
Motion to suspend the rules and allow someone to speak from the tax department.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi. I don't know if you guys have specific questions you want to talk about. Not really sure.
So we were interested in the available amount of text that we could get printed on the existing tax bills that are being mailed to the residents of Holyoke for informational purposes on what the CPA is, the amounts, the timing of this year's bills, and how they'll be in the future.
Okay. In talking to my bill printer and mailer, he suggested that, what you could do was essentially a piece of paper that's the same size as a bill, which is about a third of a regular sheet of paper. So however much information you could fit on that size, you'd be welcome to do. They could print that and attach it to the bills. As far as when the bills are going out and if they're going out is another question that I don't have an answer for right now. But for them to print that piece of paper or whatever information you want on it would be 10 cents per page that was going in a bill. And so he said about, our usual number of bills, that'd be around $1,000.
So this would be on the existing bills that are going out, 10 cents per page for the text?
Yeah, so it'd be included in the envelope with the bill. So the bill itself is full of information that you do not want to add any more
Okay, so
information
this
to,
is
because
a
no one will see it
separate-
or read it.
This is a separate
Right,
piece
this
of
would be a
paper. Okay.
separate sheet, yeah.
And you say 1,000 bills are what you mail out? Or 10,000, is that what you said?
Yeah.
10,000.
$1,000.
Can those pieces of paper be double-sided?
Yeah, they should be able to.
So we could do English and Spanish on facing pages.
Yeah,
And the cost is the same regardless of the amount of information?
correct. For that size a third of a page is 10 cents.
And if we were to do that, when would you need our copy and layout?
As soon as possible for them, because what they'll do is I'll send the information to them and then they would send me back a proof so you guys could look at and review and approve that it's how you want it.
And you send the first bills out within a
January
month?
1st is when they go out, typically.
Typically.
Mr. Chairman, would Ann, we talked about Ann's composition at the last meeting. Do you want to use that as the standard to give to the printer?
I think Ann's composition was great. What I'm worried about is the $1,000 for a committee that does not yet have any funds in a tough environment that we're currently in the city. Asking for a transfer of free cash is not ideal times, as the city was just posting a $2 million deficit.
Did you do anything with the city council?
Yeah, so free cash is not yet certified. We're not sure when it will be certified. And right now, the tax bills might not be, there's a chance they might not even be going out for the 1st. So okay, maybe you could explain to the rest of the committee that, you know, it's not in the loop on this. How would that affect funding coming in to the committee? There's no transfer of free cash available.
Correct. Realistically, if we aren't able to get actual bills out on January 1st, it would basically be just another estimated bill that people don't have to pay, because we wouldn't be able to get the actual tax rate set and actual bills to go out until the April 1st billing. So that's a huge cash flow issue, and realistically, with the CPA supposed to be on the January 1st bill, we won't be able to collect, like mandatorily collect that the first quarter. Some people will send their payment in, I mean, because that's what they're used to, but they don't have to unless it's an actual bill that goes out.
So if the city actually borrows the money or gets, you know, some other mechanism or something else passes tomorrow night, when would funds become available to the city, to the CPC?
As they come in, theoretically, the auditor's office has set up a separate fund that, as same way the real estate and personal property, when that comes in, it then gets turned over in a weekly fashion to the treasurer's office and gets booked to those accounts. So as soon as people start making payments, you won't see people make most of the payments until it's due, which is February 1st, but you'll certainly see some coming in throughout the 4 weeks of January.
Okay, so the CPA is actually, it's not coming out of the general fund in anticipation of this. It's actually as the money's collected.
Correct.
So theoretically, we'd recapture this money quickly, the first couple of bills, but what about payment for this flyer? Would they expect it initially, or is it something that we pay, like we get invoiced for to kind of float the check?
Yeah, we could definitely, I can talk to the auditor's office about how he would want to deal with it. And then also as to when, I'll talk to my bill printer as to when he would send the actual invoice. So if we can play with that timing, it would be helpful to you.
Yeah, if you can get us that information and we can get together a draft of what we'd like to send, I think it's a valuable thing to do.
Yeah, and it certainly doesn't help to have the draft prepared pending a final decision about the money.
Agreed.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we had asked to have a letter sent to the mayor requesting an advance. Has that letter been sent, and did we get a response?
I haven't sent anything to the mayor.
That letter's not been sent. That letter was, in fact, asking for a transfer, basically a loan from the city's free cash, just so we're all on the same page, to cover future expenses that we will reimburse through our collections.
Right, but I don't know if we went into that much detail. We'd asked for an advance, if the mayor would let us have an advance, but that has to go through this. He has to put it forward into the city council. It has to go through the city council.
Right.
So, we need to get that letter in so that we can start doing things, and I thought that we had decided 2 meetings ago that that letter was supposed to go.
Counselor Jordan said he was going to take care of it, so I will double check.
I believe an order was adopted.
Yeah, it's,
Maybe Mike can, it was referred to the finance committee. Yeah.
yeah, so we need the finance committee to make sure that, yeah, right, to take it up so that it can, go back to the city council.
In addition to that, we need to make sure that our proposed budget is adopted by the time the tax rates are set in order to not shut ourselves off for the funds for the year.
Oh,
I
that
think that's the
hasn't been
most
done
important
either
thing.
yet? That hasn't been done either yet? I know it went to the city council, so.
I know it did too, but I did not hear if it happened.
Was it on the agenda? Our budget?
I believe it was referred to the finance committee, so.
Okay.
I'll see, we need to, yeah. Okay. Did you,
Mr. Chairman, do you know who's the chairman of the finance committee?
Todd McGee.
I'm sorry? Okay,
present time, it may change in January.
right.
I can reach out to Todd and let him know that, council's not getting the money.
I think that's the most vital thing for us in this next month.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to forward another email to Todd or to whoever the chairman is?
I can reach out to Todd, but Ryan, why don't you let me know tomorrow?
Mr. Chairman, I had offered this draft of what we could put on the bill, but that was originally when we were thinking of putting something right on the bill itself, and so we can probably definitely put more stuff on there.
I agree. We could do a double-sided sheet, English and Spanish. I think that's one of the next items that we should agree on is what we're going to send out and get it prepared on the bill side. We should almost have a meeting again this month to get that going.
Well, we can look at, the flyer, take the information right off the flyer that Anya did,
Yes.
it's there, so I think we should decide that now so we can get it translated.
Yep, I can
We
translate
need
it
to
right
do
away.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need, if everybody has a copy of that flyer somewhere.
And that flyer actually prints at the third of a page format. So it's, yeah,
We can condense it.
yeah,
Okay.
it's all to scale in that. I mean, it's small.
Yeah. Maybe there's some things we could leave out just so we could
Yeah.
leave them. I had, the two things that I thought were the most important things were what is the surcharge on my tax bill? So I took it right from her flyer, a few sentences of it, and then who is exempt from the CPA surcharge, and then there's a few sentences of that. But then, now we can put more stuff on there. So what else is important that we want on that?
I think we should address the fact that it's a double bill in this first year, but in the future it's going to be
Yeah,
4.
this does.
It does?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what it does too. What is this, the surcharge? And then I copied that part where she mentions about the double billing right out of the, did everybody, I asked, Ryan, did you make a copy of this for everybody? I sent it to you to make copies for everyone.
No, but I can run it over.
Yeah, do it now. Please, that would be great.
Is that amount of information, is that 1/3 of a page, or is that equal to?
No, it's way less, because that was originally, we're gonna put something right on the bill. It was our understanding that there
Gotcha,
was a
okay.
small place that we could put stuff right on the bill. So that's all that, yeah. That was like the most important thing that was my opinion, what we should put on the bill. But if we have more room, we can put more stuff from the flyer here, so.
Mr. Chairman, is the dime,
We should probably
is
have
10
to do this
cents
too.
a page, is that printing on both sides or just one side?
I believe that's what you said. I
Both
believe you
sides.
said both sides.
Both sides?
Yeah, he said just a sheet. I'll verify that with the information that I'll send to Ryan tomorrow.
Okay.
But
While we're waiting, is it 30 days? Whoever your printer is there a net, does he have like an agreement with the city as an account that you pay net 30 days? Is that how your billing cycle for your printer?
Well, all he does is the real estate and personal property and motor vehicle, but that's through a contract that I have with them. because they do our collection for outstanding stuff too. So I don't,
I mean, when you guys get a bill from this
Separate.
printer, does he expect his money within 30 days? Is that,
that's on the list of things that I'm gonna ask him when the invoice would come in.
oh, okay.
Sorry, I just don't know, cause I don't pay them an invoice. It's just our annual contract.
Okay, so until we get the flyer back, we can look what else in that, the draft of the smaller version, till we get those back, we can maybe go on to the next thing if you want.
So we are going to approve a flyer, and we're coordinating and awaiting the timing, and there's still a lot of information, but we're going to get a flyer approved tonight, correct?
Yes, I would like to, not the flyer so much, or what, is that what you're calling, what we're gonna?
That's what I'm calling it.
Okay,
yeah.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
The insert.
The insert, yes, okay, yes.
Okay.
We should do that
No, I
tonight,
think-
and,
The idea is just to have one ready to go if we find we can pull the trigger.
Yes, exactly. So
But I
I
don't
think the
think-
timing
yeah.
is,
Yeah.
yeah.
But just looking at this, it looks like it will be easy to just take out a little bit of text and it'll shrink right down. I mean, it's already perfectly
exactly.
formatted.
Do you have a
Exactly.
Word copy of it on your computer?
Now, I'm looking at the PDF.
Can you edit in PDF?
I probably can. I've never tried,
Would
but
you like
I
us
can.
to email you a copy of our approved?
Yeah, that would be
Flyer.
perfect. And like I said, I'll get all of the rest of this information. I'll talk to
see.
the auditor's office and get all of that once I get it back to Ryan tomorrow.
Excellent.
It might be too difficult to do in PDF, especially for adding.
Well, I suspect that what we're going to be doing is
Marking
cutting,
up.
but yeah, it may be easier just to mark it up and then,
I take that home and
yeah,
make the edits.
it's probably by the time I figure out how to edit,
Yeah.
the meeting will be over. But
One thing I did want to ask was on that flyer, I mentioned a city's, like a website, and I know that's on our agenda tonight, but I think we should add the website to the flyer.
That's,
yeah, if
If
we
we
have
know
a
that
URL for
information.
it, we certainly should, even if it's a
If we know
last minute
it up,
addition, yeah.
Is there something
Or if we
on
can
the
save
website?
I don't think there is yet, but if we're not submitting this tonight for print, at the last minute, we can certainly drop in the URL when we have it.
Yeah.
Right, or as Debbie Brunel had said, we can just put their phone number for people who want to get applications for exemptions.
That too.
At least that, and that's one thing I had put on the, did you get one of these? Everybody has one of these drafts? The smaller version? Everybody have that small version? Yeah, okay. Okay, so the first part is, well, you want to read your flyer and go over it?
What does the Community Preservation Act surcharge on your tax bill enable the city of Holyoke to do? The CPA enables cities and towns in Massachusetts to create a local dedicated fund for open space, historic preservation, community housing, and outdoor recreation projects. Cities and towns that adopt the act can or also receive funds from the statewide Community Preservation Trust Fund each year to help fund these projects. I don't know if that's too much.
I don't think it's too much, but could we just like put a question mark on that one? Because I don't know if that's most important thing at this point in time. Eventually, it will definitely be, so I would suggest that we put a question mark there, but the next part, definitely.
Who is exempt from the CPH surcharge? Low-income families and seniors who are low to moderate income would be fully exempt from the CPA surcharge. Holyoke has opted to collect the surcharge quarterly. Your January and April 2018 tax bill reflects two surcharge payments combined. Going forward, your surcharge payment collected quarterly will be about half this amount.
Okay, so those January and April.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's definitely an important section that my suggestion is that we definitely put that in there.
That's why I had it bolded.
And I don't know, where did I get, what is the surcharge? That should be before this part.
What is, yeah, maybe that should be the first thing,
Yeah,
like this paragraph.
did I get that from here?
Maybe you just phrased it differently.
Okay, so what I did is I took that whole paragraph there, who was exempt from the CPA, and broke it down into two parts. What is the surcharge on my tax bill?
And then who
the
was exempt.
Then I put who was exempt from it.
Okay, so I can work with that. I think we should probably start with this. What is the surcharge? And then Holyoke has opted to collect the CPA surcharge quarterly.
Yeah,
January and February.
What is the surcharge? I mean, are there sentences going to go after that? Or what is it for the opening paragraph?
Yeah, basically what Elaine has written here would be like the first paragraph, and then 6 lines down, she has who is exempt. So, you know, that, she has it condensed, and I think that's how we need to start. And then, you know, I started with what is CPA and what does it do, just as some background, and I basically took that from all the information from the websites and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, is that would be too, are you saying that paragraph, your
I
first
feel like
paragraph is
we're-
too much? Do you think it's too much?
This already, you know, if it's gonna be a third of this size, the text is gonna be really small, so I think we need to cut stuff. And, you know, the first paragraph could
But,
probably,
well,
I think-
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering, is the average person that excuse me. Is the average is the average person even going to know what the community surcharge is, period? I mean, like all of us, when we look at our tax bill, it's a freaking tax bill. I mean, what are you going to do? But now you're asking to take more money out of my pocket. Well, why? I mean, if you say we opted to collect, all right, well, what is it? What did you opt to collect? The average, you know, I don't think we're going to remember that at the last election we voted on this.
yeah, and
So,
that's
I
why
mean, you
this
actually-
does paint a nice pic, you know, this does give all that background and
you're-
reasons why.
Your very first paragraph says, look, we all know what the property tax, we have to pay our property taxes, but there's a reason, we all know the reason for that, but here we're saying, we've opted to collect the Preservation Act surcharge. Well, what's that? I don't think the average person is going to remember what it is. So the tax collector's office may be getting flooded with phone calls or complaints saying, I never heard of this thing. I mean,
Should we talk about the election and how it was, you know, the city of Holyoke,
Did I
voted to
have it in there? I thought I,
adopt this?
Yeah, I'd like to add something if I could. The last sentence is actually, that last little paragraph is actually quite important because where can you find out more? So if you look at this whole page, I'll bet if you took half of it out, that would stretch out and be a third of a page. So the fifth paragraph down, what types of projects? I think you can strike that.
yeah,
What can CPA funds be spent on? That's a repeat from the first one.
yeah, I think those
And then
two
if
are-
you know, how is it funded? I mean, I'll bet you've gotten rid of a third of that whole thing right there. But the important thing is to say, go to the website to find out more.
I agree.
And then the thing about, you know, there is a surcharge, here's who's exempt, and here, you know, I believe that a lot of the work can easily be done just by eliminating that section there and then reformatting it, and it'll be big enough to read. And it's got to have some big logo so they understand, because I don't know about you guys, but I take out my bill, I pay online, so I throw the envelope in the recycle, and if there's like, take a quick look, do I want to read this? And usually it goes in my recycle. So you got to catch their intrigue. It's got to say, is there a CPA logo, a statewide logo that?
Can we use yellow paper or something like to catch?
Yeah, I was envisioning like a colored piece of paper, but I don't know if that's an upcharge. Probably costs more.
If I may ask Kate, could there be something on the bill next to the actual surcharge to say C insert? Just say C insert to be able to,
Yeah, we should be able to do that. I'll talk to Tony.
and then maybe they'll look at it, yeah.
Oh,
But I
that's
agree.
great.
I think that,
See important insert,
That's great.
yeah, right,
right?
exactly.
Important insert.
That, so I agree, I think what he suggested, we put the first, three paragraphs, how, I don't know about how is CPA funding, the generated, and then that last paragraph. Just leave out these two for now, these two.
Some of the text down and pull up a logo or two. One with the volleyball and the Viking. Looks like, hey,
No, it's a good,
that's from, boat was going through from their material.
So is that too much to ask, that you could email that to her tomorrow? You'll have to get her email address and email it to
I'll
you,
translate it,
because, so she can translate it.
I'll probably email it to Libby first and
Sure.
get the translation.
Yeah, right, that's right, yeah.
Absolutely.
Couple days.
I can do it, yeah.
Good.
So rather than go through the process of trying to edit these two paragraphs that we have here, if everybody's open with it, the first one, what can CPA funds be spent on? I think that one hits it all. I think everything in the second paragraph is completely redundant. And, just going back to the ballot and the, citywide debate, the important piece here is, for everybody to know, the funds may never be directed to the general fund. They may only be spent on CPA core projects. So that's key, and the rest, there it is, open space and recreation, historic resources, and community housing. Everything in the whole second paragraph is completely redundant of those three lines. So if the committee was happy, instead of waiting any more time, get this done now, you've got it right there in that one paragraph.
But in the first paragraph, it says what it's for. You don't have to do this one, it says it up here.
Okay.
I think we'd already decided to jettison that paragraph.
well, as Mike pointed out, it does, in that paragraph, it's saying, how is the CPA funding generated? It says everything, including the dollar amounts, which are approximate.
I don't believe we were getting rid of that, how is CPA generated paragraph. I thought it was the next two after that.
Yeah.
All right, so it's the pleasure of the committee. The entire two
Those two are out,
completely struck without any editing.
and then we translate and submit.
The only suggestion I would have is that at the end there, in case our website isn't up yet, when this goes out,
Right.
we should probably just put the assessor's phone number, which, which I have on there just in case.
Sure, send it to him, not me, I like it.
Yeah. I don't want to be telling them to go to the website and there is none yet, And we could maybe say future, there'll be a future website, but at this point in time, there's not, so.
But ideally, there will be a website, and the full version of this flyer could be up on
Right,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So do we have a motion to accept changes as proposed by the committee?
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll be sending you an email in the next few days.
Perfect, I'll be sending one to Ryan once I get all the answers.
Thank
that
you.
you're looking for.
Thank you, Kate.
The next item we had for discussion was information on the city website. We are hoping to have the website begun at this point and start to have some administrative abilities, but that is not the case yet. Have you talked to her in the last few days?
Yeah, tentatively she wants to meet on Friday and hopefully get something
Okay.
at least you guys can look at, and see some of the flyer information.
So I would motion that we would postpone this agenda item until the next meeting.
Second.
And if I may, yes, we're going to put the flyer on there for sure. Does she have that information?
Yes.
And then if we decide tonight to do adopt our rules and regulations from the East Hampton, just change with a few changes that we thought we should add that in there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As well as our names, and I think she had a little template that she left
Right,
with.
right, yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
So the next item we have is the discussion of adopting the rules tweaked to our uniqueness. So the East Hampton rules, which we circulated last meeting. And I left my binder on my desk at work, so I apologize, I don't have them, I haven't.
So I may have,
did we have any left over of these?
I can make the copies again.
How many
I mean, I can
copies?
share with
And
yeah, I may
Mike,
have,
share if you
because,
will.
yeah, I may have just handed you or one with
Yeah.
missing pages, but
Well,
if
mine's
so,
messed up, you know,
Oh, the one without three.
the way it's, I have the pages, so be careful. You're missing, I know, yeah.
so while we wait for copies, one really obvious point that ties into the rest of our meeting agenda is that we don't yet have an application procedure or application documents, and we're not likely to for quite some time. We also don't have money. But Andrew Smith and Alicia Zoller are moving forward very rapidly with their with hiring a consultant to get that plan written. And I have had a chance to look at the substantive side of the proposals of the two people who responded to our request for proposals. And, both of them look very strong. I didn't look at the financials because I figured, the professionals could take care of that. But both the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and an outfit called Community Organization something, anyway, COG, have responded to our request for proposals. They both have, solid points to them. They are strong in different ways, and they each have some weaknesses that we can talk about at some point. But both of them, I suspect because it was in the RFP, have proposed that they, as part of this project, write us up at the end an application procedure and some guidelines. So rather than adopt East Hampton's rules around that, we might want to wait until we have our own, which we should do, or which we should have within the next 6 months. And as I read East Hampton, their section 6 to a great extent relates to votes on funding. 7 through 9 are all about funding. 10, isn't really, I don't think it limits us in any way, but it still is kind of premature because we're going to be developing our own funding proposal documents. So, there's no real reason to adopt those at this time, I don't think.
So you're proposing we strike those items that would be addressed in our plan that we're having professionally written in our first draft or our initial regulation acceptance?
Yeah, or just, stick those paragraphs in with big to come notifications on them, because there's no real point in adopting application-specific terms and rules that we're just going to overrule.
I have to look at them and see what it says. I thought they were pretty general. I didn't think they were too specific. Were they really specific on that?
It's not that they're so specific, it's that, I think they're just redundant. There's no reason to have something that says, the committee shall determine submittal requirements for applications for funding, et cetera, et cetera. The committee shall have 4 funding cycles per year, when 6 months from now, when the project is concluded, we may have decided that we want 2 funding cycles, and we may have a set of documents that doesn't necessarily cohere with the provisions set forth here. I mean, there's no problem with revising. These
We can
rules
always amend it.
do allow for amendment at our will. I just, it seems to me silly to adopt something for the sake of adopting it when it addresses a series of duties we don't even have yet.
So I think these are excellent points. Should we go through each section and decide whether it will be on our initial?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to do
Yeah.
when he brings us back. Yeah.
So, and I do think it's important to realize that Section 16 is amendment and revision, which provides for changing of any of these as we go, so.
Right, yeah. And also, I wanted to remind you, Mimi, that you wanted to add some wording into the chairman's duties, or not so much duties,
yeah.
but what he's
Yeah, no.
allowed to do as part of the, yeah.
Yes, that's sitting here in my notes, but I figured I would
Yeah.
wait till we were actually looking at the provisions. But yeah, I definitely think it's worth adding the sentence allowing the chair to participate in substantive discussion.
I remember that discussion last time, yes, thank you for remembering.
Mr. Chairman, regarding that matter, I was just looking at the planning board's operations rules and regulations, and they have again, I don't know if anybody has that. This is Article 10, Conduct of Public Meeting, and it describes the chairman and standing committees, and there was a page on the specific officers and their duties, and this is from the Holyoke Planning Board, and it describes the chairman, the vice chairman, and the secretary, very specific. I thought that was a pretty good way to model what we have, because it covers pretty much what I think all of us want you to do. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know how the rest of the committee feels.
Well, I would be happy to do that. I brought in the planning board rules because, I've worked with them and they seem to work fairly well.
No, it's
And,
well done.
I take no credit for them. They were there when I arrived, but.
Yeah, that's what she had quoted.
It's Article 5, well, here, you guys can.
But we could, if it is the will of the committee to do that, I think we could just drop that into the appropriate spot in the East Hampton rules.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. Mr. Chairman, do you want to start reading the
Yes.
section 1?
So, Section 1, Authority. In accordance with the Holyoke City Charter, I would assume,
Yes.
I'm not sure of the sections, but each multiple member body may determine their own rules for conduct of their business and shall file a copy of said rules with the city clerk. The Community Preservation Act referred to throughout as CPA committee, legislated under Massachusetts General Law 44B and we'll insert Holyoke ordinances, adopts these rules consistent with the laws of Holyoke and Massachusetts.
Yeah, we should be able to find and reference the enabling CPC ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, with the committee, I don't want to take up a lot of the time. I went to the website and took section 272.1 from the East Hampton's general ordinances, and it states, it specifically, well, what it does, it says, this is the basis of the authority that the Community Preservation Committee can act. I actually have a copy of it, and it basically says, Division 8, added by City Council with the date, approved by the mayor with the date, amended by the City Council and approved in the final draft by the mayor. So this is what it refers to, and it simply states that.
We have that. We have that in our ordinances, I hope.
Okay, well, no, and I think that's why the city of East Hampton did it. They're saying,
Yes.
look, we're not making this up as we go along.
Right.
The mayor signed on it, the city council signed it, therefore, as whatever our equivalent to the section 272-1, it refers to, there's a legal basis for us to be here, and it was discussed by the city council and signed by the mayor.
Correct.
So that would reflect our version of that.
I don't think it's that complicated. It's just those particular numbers we need to put in. We need to find out what the ordinance is. You're on the city council, so if you can find out for us what was the number of the ordinance that created the CPA. Because I know they did it.
I can get that.
Yeah, that would be great.
I can get
because
that done by tomorrow.
Right.
Unfortunately,
And I
we
know
don't
about
keep
the city
Unicode up to
charter.
date,
I
so.
don't think there's any, I don't know if in the charter it says that But we may not have to even put that in, because I don't know if our charter, I don't remember reading that ever in the charter, that multiple member bodies may determine their own rules of conduct. I don't know about, I never saw that in there, so, in the charter. So we can,
Just refer it to legal, you know, I'll give it to Crystal and ask her to put the proper authority section.
or just ask her what it is, because I don't think that the rest of it is, we need her to go over with. No, because it's just those,
Yeah, no, just the section 1 authority.
if you could.
Yeah, just the section 1 authority.
Right. That's fine.
Very good.
So what would you folks want to do regarding that? Get the equivalent to,
I'll get the proper legal wording for the authority, either from the legal department or, you know, through the city council.
So with the exception of this tailored to Holyoke specific laws, is there any other comments or questions? Okay. Section 2 is CPA officers. First CPA meeting in January shall begin as an organizational meeting. At that time, the committee shall elect a chairperson, vice chairperson, and a secretary. Subject to the fiscal appropriation, the committee may employ experts, clerical, and other assistants. So,
So-
Started in January, where,
ours started in September. But our fiscal cycle,
but we could start over in January.
Or we could just have our year start when this board started, which was, and when did we all get together for the first time?
September.
September. We could just have a September start date for the,
But there may be new members in January,
well, there may be new members with any board.
but there will,
Everybody,
January start, then we might have turnover, I don't know.
I don't know, I mean, the planning board's start is somewhere in the fall. I think we do October vaguely when we get to it. And I have no idea how the other boards in the city work.
okay.
It's just, you know, either way works. It's just a matter of what we want to do.
If the annual calendar works best for most committees, I'm okay with that. Or we can stay on for the year as we are now. Any thoughts?
Well, I guess it just depends on what is the proper thing to do. I mean, we started in September, so can we, if we already started, we could go September to August, and that would be our year. But will that work with everything else that we have, reports we have to make, you know, our finances coming in, our public hearings, our projects? I think January through the calendar year would work better with how the public hearings are gonna go and the financing and.
We are taxed on the calendar year. I agree. I think it makes sense to have us in line with the first tax bills. That would be the first tax bill of the year, January's?
Well, technically, no.
June's?
The fiscal year for the city is July until June. So their first tax bill goes out for July. But those are estimated bills until they do
They set the rate.
yeah, till they set the rate. And then the January and April bill catch up with what the bill's supposed to be. But that is, the tax year is July to June.
Right.
But,
Sure.
yeah, go ahead.
well, what is, as far as the rest of the city council, do they go by January to January? Is that
No.
the city
No, they do
council
the fis-
meetings when you're
well, no, with
procedural?
committees and electing
Well,
the
that's
council
true.
president.
Like an
That's true,
annual
they
meeting?
start that in January.
Well,
Yep.
let's, I mean,
Does this
whatever
even
the
matter?
will of the community, why don't we start as long with everybody else?
It's as good a time as any.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So,
Unless somebody tells us different. we
yeah,
can do
so
the
everybody's happy
calendar
with
year.
section 2?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Well, then the question is, having decided what our start date is going to be, do we want to substitute the long list of officers and their duties for the bare bones single or two sentences in the East Hampton, or do we not?
I think they covered that later on. The CPA officers, section 2.
That's where we are, section 2.
Oh, wait a minute, do I have the wrong?
That's,
Oh, you know
that's
what?
a double copy.
Okay, all right. Okay, I got 2 pages the same.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a good idea. If we were to insert, as part of the CPA officers under Section 2, would be to, again, I'm just using this as a basis of the Holyoke Planning Board, where they describe the officers of CPC will consist of the chairman, vice chairman, and secretary, and then it goes on, as is printed here, for everyone's to know. It's got the chairman shall preside at all meetings and hearings of the board, the function of the chairman, the function of the vice chairman, and the function of the secretary, very specifically.
So the motion is to add the planning board's committee duties into section 2 on our proposal.
Yeah, I think that was a good idea. So it just tells you who's our governing body, or who are the officers and what their jobs are under the CPA officers, since that's part of the same narrative when they're going to get elected and what their duties are.
Okay.
Yeah, we could essentially strike the second paragraph of the East Hampton section 2 and replace it with the language from Article 5 of the Holyoke Planning Board rules. Mm-hmm. And that also takes care of the chair shall have the privilege of discussing everything, as opposed to having to shift to the vice chair to say anything useful in the course of discussion, which I do think is helpful.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Meetings and agendas. The committee shall hold regular monthly meetings at...
What about vacancy, the third?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In the event of a vacancy in any officership, the committee shall nominate and elect a new officer from its members at the first regular meeting after the vacancy has occurred.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think keeping that makes sense.
And could I ask a question of the secretary, if I may? Can you keep track of all this and do this up as a...
As long as we have it on tape, I can get it.
Yeah, and put it together for us?
Yes, happy to do it.
Yeah, okay, great. That would be great.
Okay, section 3, meetings and agendas. The committee shall hold regular monthly meetings in the municipal building on a day and time as determined by the committee. Do we want to ensure it's monthly, or?
No.
I would
strike
be
that.
flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Scratch monthly,
yeah,
regular meetings.
I agree.
Well, we should, I mean, yeah, that's a good idea, but we can always have, extra, we can have special meetings, but to state we're at least going to have one meeting a month is how, we can have more, but at least have
There
one.
probably are going to be times when it would be a quarter.
Right.
yeah.
We may not have to meet every
We
month.
may only have 4 meetings a year when we're all set up and running.
Well, I would suggest...
I don't know, but I hope so. I hope you're right.
Yeah, so I wouldn't put any time, I would strike that time.
Yeah, I would suggest that we make, an internal note to revisit this once we have our plan established and we have some idea of what our workload is going to be. I mean, I agree that it makes sense to have some sort of regular schedule once we know, but that may be a decision that we're just not in a position to make yet, whether we want to commit to monthly or quarterly or...
So for now, we can agree to hold regular meetings.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
that will cover
Yeah.
any.
But that's fine, if that's the will of the board, but will the average citizen know, I mean, we say we're going to have our meetings every Thursday evening at 6:30. I'm just throwing that out. One on the first Thursday of the month. That would be a rule of thumb that the average citizen who want to come here would say, well, when are your meetings held? And we have it on our blog. Well, it's the first Thursday of the month. I'm just wondering if we say, well, we got nothing doing for June, let's postpone it. Or I think there's something to be said to have at least one meeting a month, even if it's duplication of effort, or even if it's rehashing some old business. Especially when we're first getting born, I'd rather get together at least once a month and state that. We can get together more,
We've
but,
been getting together twice and 3 times a month.
no,
so,
I mean, that's fine,
you
but
know,
to state,
so
I
the
prefer to state it, that we have to get together at least once a month until we get born. And then as our story unfolds, we could cut back.
I prefer flexibility.
Second that.
And the thing is that if people want to know when we're meeting, they go on the website, our city website, our meetings are listed there.
We've already had to
Ryan
reschedule
has-
a few meetings in our
Exactly.
short existence.
Exactly, yeah, so.
Yeah, and that is a problem for predictability. I think we're going to have to address that going forward. You know, it's all been for good reasons that we suddenly had to reschedule, but, you know, I get inquiries. It's hard for people to know when we're going to be here.
I think that as we kind of get the feel for how this will be, we can always amend this.
But no, that was my point if we leave it flexible for now and we just say meet regularly, we can revisit it when we know more about how this is all working.
Okay, I'm going to continue if there's nothing else. The chairperson shall set and submit agendas for regular meetings. Additional special meetings of the CPA may be scheduled by the chairperson or 3 other committee members. You guys like 3? Is that, I mean, I don't know if it has to be, if 2 of you guys wanted to set a meeting, I think that would be fine.
I make the 3.
All right. If the 2
Bar
don't
high.
hold us on.
Well, right, there's 9 of us, right? So maybe it should be a quorum decides, maybe it should be 5.
Yeah.
So we
Mr.
can-
Chairman, under this meeting and agendas, again, I'm borrowing from the Holyoke Planning Board. Under their Article 8, they have a specific section that says order of business. That's how and it describes how they conduct their meetings. First of all, is a call to order. Then they follow a procedure. Is it the will of this board to just keep it open, or do you want to keep it specific that we're going to approve the minutes of the meeting first, then we're going to do the chairman's report, then do you want to go in that manner? The Holyoke Planning Board is very specific. They have very specific road on how they conduct their business. What is your thoughts?
Well, just for what it's worth, we do have these very specific rules, and we ignore them all the time. And this is one of the things that's just a dead letter on the board as it functions. You know, I think that's often a good thing because we can work very collegially and not worry too much about exact order. Okay. This may be more important when we get to the point where we're actually holding public hearings. And that, again, may be something that we should discuss when we're talking about how we will set up our plan and, you know, what it's going to look like and what our public outreach is going to look like. Because, you know, if we're out there with hundreds of people, we are going to need more order than we have for our regular meetings.
Can I add to that? I think it might be a good strategy to approve more of a bare bones set of rules at this point, and then once we meet with our consultant and we get a better idea and feel of how things are running, we could then address these when we're slow in the fall, in the spring or something, when we're looking for stuff to do.
I agree.
I think this is a good outline.
Just getting an outline and establishing some rules that we can file.
Something that can be on the website.
Right.
Because we would be sitting here till midnight if we go through
Right, we're on
it.
section 3. Halfway. So, okay, five committee members?
Yes.
Okay. I'll keep going. To facilitate compliance with the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, agendas for meetings of the committee shall be transmitted at least 1 week before the scheduled meeting date. To the city clerk, all committee members, staff, administrative assistants, current applicants, and any other city department agency relevant to the discussion of the items on the agenda. I mean, that's the
1
law,
week?
right?
That would be great.
Eventually, we will need all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just us.
Is the law 1 week?
I don't think so.
48 hours. I'm just,
So, should we just put 48 hours and try to adhere to a week?
I don't know where they got that, a week, yeah.
Well,
Well, it says at least 1 week.
yeah, a week is obviously better.
Right.
At
But it also hamstrings you if you're looking to do something quickly,
trying to
something
turn
pops
quick.
up and you need to do it.
48
That's
hours
true.
sounds good.
Okay,
I think we just, if you do this, you can add an addendum or a late file to a meeting. That's what happens at city council all the time. So as long as you've got it posted that you're having the meeting, what the anticipated schedule, I think there's a line there at the bottom that says, or any other business that may come before it, and then you have the late files. So it addresses that.
Mr. Chairman, we're settling on 48 hours as the amount of time?
Well, I don't know if we should, if we're gonna do 48 hours, I don't know if we should refer to the Mass General Law, because where did they get that about it having to be a week?
well, they say facilitate, they don't say to comply with. But, I would suggest maybe what we want to do is say, should normally be transmitted at least 1 week before, and that we will not accept materials submitted less than 48 hours.
Well, Mike's point was just that we can add amendments if needed at the end. So that would be in opposition to the 48 hours, right?
Yeah, I think the 1 week thing is just to get it in Ryan's hands, or the city clerk's hands, so that they can get it published, to give them enough time so it's not coming to them at 5 p.m. on, Friday. That's.
And
all
you're
we're
saying
asking.
we
It's not
still-
a-
we
I
still
don't
have
think that'd be a hard,
flexibility.
fast rule.
Right.
It's, yeah, exactly, a guideline.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Any and all executive sessions held by the CPA are governed by Massachusetts general laws. Okay, so this is, keep that. Section 4, conduct of meetings. The chairperson or other presiding officer shall call each meeting to order and shall manage each meeting using their best efforts to ensure that all matters on the agenda are addressed in an efficient manner, that all individuals desiring to speak will have the opportunity to do so. The presiding officer shall follow the meeting agenda unless a majority of the members present agree to address agenda items in a different order. Nathan? Okay. The chairperson shall announce the opening of the hearing for each application and shall conduct the public hearing consistent with section 6 below.
Okay, well, now they're getting into,
Yeah, it is.
that's a different, we're looking at something that's gonna be for our meeting that we have, not public hearings yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could skip that for now?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, this was where I started thinking that maybe we should just put it in brackets of, to come.
Reserved.
Yeah. And fill this in when we have more information.
I agree.
Okay.
After all items on the agenda have been addressed, the presiding officer may adjourn the meeting, or any other committee member may take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Okay. Section 5, quorum and actions of the CPA. As established in the Holyoke General Ordinances, the committee consists of 9 members comprised as a stipulated therein.
Yeah, that'll just be a reference back to the statute.
Okay. The committee may not meet or conduct business without a quorum of the membership present. A majority of the committee members constitute a quorum. A majority vote of the entire committee membership is required to approve any committee action or recommendation. Okay.
That's good.
Section 6, motions and voting. Any member may make a motion for any reason at any time. The wording of the motions for funding should be made in an affirmative, so that votes in favor of the motion are votes to approve funding, and votes to oppose the motion are votes to deny funding. Straightforward. Once a motion is made, it shall be immediately addressed by the committee. If no other member seconds the motion, it shall be considered withdrawn. If another member seconds the motion, further discussion related to the motion shall be allowed to occur before the vote is held. Section 7, applications and funding cycles. This is where we're going to get into
Yeah, I would
specifics
say
of
just
our town.
reserve this.
Okay. Section 8, hearing guidelines. Is this something that we're going to develop additionally down the road?
I think so.
Section 9, evaluation criteria and decisions. I still think we
Yeah.
need to push this one out. Section 10, record keeping and reporting requirements. Okay, the committee, acting through the secretary or designated clerk assistant, shall keep a full and accurate record of all meetings, actions, recommendations, appropriations, and expenditures made from CPA funds.
And I would suggest only that, because we're dealing with funding here, the treasurer ought to be part of that record keeping and discussion. I don't know. The East Hampton CPA doesn't seem to have a treasurer. Yeah, they just have,
So our administrative record keeping can be designated to two individuals, a treasurer and secretary.
yeah, just for the financials, because if we have a treasurer, they obviously are the go-to for
Yeah.
the financial records. And they do,
I
so.
agree with that change. Yeah.
Change secretary to treasurer.
Yeah,
Well,
Or
so
add
it'd be
treasurer.
a second line, I think, because
yeah,
there is a significant amount of workload here for the secretary. It's just the treasurer will be in charge of tracking appropriations, expenditures made from CPA funds.
So you want to keep secretary in there?
Keep secretary.
But divide up the workload, is that what it is?
Right.
Yeah.
And I would end the sentence after recommendations. And the treasurer would be responsible for recording appropriations and expenditures made from CPA funds.
The city treasurer, is that what you're,
No, the treasurer of our committee.
okay.
The committee shall also keep records of any real property interest acquired, disposed of, or improved by the city upon its recommendation.
Projects.
Yeah.
yeah, but that's
Copy
probably something we'll want to
down the
do
road,
anyway
yeah.
down the road.
Copies of previous minutes shall be distributed to all committee members before the next scheduled meeting. Once approved, a copy of the minutes shall be forwarded to the city clerk. Okay. The committee shall be responsible for annual reporting as required by the Department of Revenue. So that's where we had some discussion about this before. I think the treasurer report would cover this, but there's also, we would be working with the tax collector or the assessor's office. I don't know if we want to cite that in this.
So, and yeah, we don't.
About the committee working with treasurer or the city clerk's office shall be.
Well, the committee should be responsible for making sure that this is happening. We don't have to actually do it, we just have to make sure the treasurer is going to do the work.
Okay,
That
so,
it's happening, that work is happening,
okay.
yeah.
Well, there, Mr. Chairman, there is the Department of Revenue does require us to give them a specific report. It's in that website for the Community Preservation Organization. And there's 3 other reports that we have to generate from this committee. That's a formula we have to follow once a year. In addition to this, for our own upkeep, but for the state also, we're required to do.
So this statement here should cover our responsibilities to do that. Okay. Section 11, funding limitations, conditions, and restrictions.
Keep it.
That's good, okay.
Okay. Section 12 is the preservation plan, which we are currently building. Do we want to wait until we have a more developed plan? Okay.
Well, we could, Mr. Chairman, I know it's not this is general, section 12 is just a general statement. The committee shall study the needs and resources and possibilities. It's not that specific, so I think if we adopted it, it's just saying that we are going to do it.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah, that one didn't trouble me particularly.
Okay. Section 12. Section 13, committee member attendance. Committee members are expected to be present at and participate in CPA meetings in accordance with Section 8-7 of the East Hampton City Charter. Any member who is absent from 3 or more consecutive meetings or all of the meetings held during the first 4 calendar months or 1/2 or more of the meetings in 1 calendar year may be asked to resign from the committee or may be removed by a majority vote of the remaining members, provided that notice of the proposed vote is given to the member and their appointing authority.
Yeah, we should definitely have that, because all the committees that I'm on, we have a problem with that when there's.
You want to become a non-functioning committee.
Right, and exactly, and plus the fact we're gonna be dealing with projects, we need people to be there and get the information and
Okay, is
be
there
able to vote.
any comment on the timelines that are proposed here? I think it's good.
Oh, that's fine.
Obviously, we'll have to check the reference to the charter.
I don't know if it says that in our charter, so that's, we
I-
maybe, once, yeah, no, I don't think that's.
I propose we just delete in accordance through city charter. Begin a sentence with any member who.
I agree.
Just get rid of that whole
Yeah.
sentence, yeah.
Section 14, Code of Ethics. The committee requires an atmosphere of professional conduct and civility among its members and shall not tolerate harassment, discrimination, or offensive behavior based on race, color, religion, national origin, gender, age, disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity, nor shall any member of the committee use profanity, insulting, threatening, or abusive language in the course of public debate or in testimony before any city agency, committee, or commission. Okay. The code shall apply whenever a CPA member is in any public setting representing the committee. These principles shall be enforced by the public through resolution, censure, and other action deemed appropriate by the committee as a whole. I have no issues with any of that. Section 15, conflicts of interest. All members are responsible for knowing and complying with the Massachusetts law regarding conflicts of interest. Any member may recuse themselves from any matter by disclosing to the committee that they believe that they have a conflict of interest with the matter under discussion. Members need not disclose any of the content of conflict to recuse themselves. However, once disclosed, the member may not participate in any further committee discussions or actions regarding that matter. Any member who believes that they have a potential conflict of interest and wishes to remain involved in that matter may do so if in accordance with Massachusetts general laws after disclosing the potential conflict to their appointing authority.
And here I would just add that, the Massachusetts does have an ethics board that will give members of public commissions and boards binding and reliable opinions about whether they're required to recuse themselves. You can call in if you're a member. They'll normally get back to you the same day if they need to. And we might want to add a provision there that in case of any question about, or if a question is raised about whether a member should recuse themselves, they will go to that committee and get or that board and get an ethics ruling.
I think excellent. I think we should add that.
This might be worth thinking about. Just in the last week, the city council adopted a code of ethics now as part of the city ordinances. Maybe we want to mirror that, because there's some other things, this is just for example, not disparaging anybody at the table. We may decide to put a new roof on the building, and someone here may have a family member who is a roofer. For example, so we might want to take a look at the recently adopted code of ethics for the city council. We might want to just mirror that and have that reflect our standard on that, rather than go into a lot of different detail. Just that'd be
Mike, did you guys pass that? Is that your?
Yes.
Did you guys pass it?
Doesn't that talk about taking money?
Yeah, that was about campaign contributions.
yes, but
Other parts, maybe we want to look.
I mean,
at
some parts.
Yeah.
Well, they just wouldn't apply. I mean, we'd adopt it and they just wouldn't apply to us because we don't have campaign funds.
Want that in our rules to talk
All right.
because we don't need it.
So would that be back under section 14 that we previously discussed?
Uh,
All right, so
We're on
that's what
15.
that's what I
Yeah.
just read.
yeah,
That there would be a point where a conflict of interest would be a breach of the law. And I'll also point out that we can amend these later if we decide we want to enact stronger conflict of interest. I don't want to.
So let's, maybe we can bring the city council's adopted ethics, and we can review it and amend.
Yeah, I would be curious about, I mean, we might not want to,
Mike, would you provide those? Yes.
yes, I would just suggest that perhaps we wait until it is signed and adopted, if it's going to be signed, because, you know,
Our rules you're suggesting?
no, not this. You know, if we're going to refer to the city council's newly enacted ethics rules, you know, I think they were just passed, but it's an open question whether they're going to be signed and whether there will be any changes if they're vetoed and, you know,
the
blah,
mayor,
blah,
the
blah.
mayor still has to sign them.
Okay.
Do you know with the conflict of interest? Do you know, like, with the these ethics that were adopted by the city, if they have to conduct like an online conflict of interest certification? Because there's a well, sometimes with employees they have to do that and they get a certificate.
Yeah,
and it's
we-
done on an annual basis.
Yeah, the city council members all have to do that.
Okay. Do you know if we will have to do something like that, being part of this board? No.
No, I don't think any of the other
Because
boards.
it does talk on those questions about like if what you presented, if there's a family member that has a roofing business, would it be a conflict of interest? So there's a lot of interesting questions there that really provide education so we don't make mistakes or, you know, breach the law.
I had to do that for the Conservation Commission.
Right. Yeah.
Really?
Training and the questionnaire.
A questionnaire is it done on an annual basis?
Oh, I had to do that for the Conservation Commission.
So I'm not sure if we would have to do something like that, if it would protect us or if it would be required from us, but.
Well, we can add it to our rules, or we can just train ourselves on it.
I wouldn't add it unless somebody tells us we have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, section 16, amendment and revision. These rules may be replaced, revised, or amended at any time by a majority vote of the CPA and shall take effect upon filing with the city clerk.
Oh, we're so relying on that.
What's that, man?
That we're relying on that provision.
Yeah. Most important one.
Right, don't take that out.
Yeah, right.
I motion to adopt the draft rules and regulations as just discussed.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
And I will
Okay.
prepare a draft of what I think we have just agreed on, and Ryan and I will get it circulated.
Okay, the final item we have was general discussion. I think it's been a productive meeting tonight, thank you. And does anybody have anything for the group?
Well, we're gonna have the, is she gonna come to our next meeting, the person who's doing the website? Is she gonna
Well,
come to our meeting or?
he has a meeting with her on Friday, and I propose to move it to the next CPA meeting, that item 3.
So
So,
whatever they discuss is gonna be on our agenda.
yeah.
So you're gonna let us know what you guys decide? Yeah, hopefully I'll have a report back. Yeah, so we want the flyer and the rules and regulations.
And we'll need the web address too
Yeah,
for the
Yeah.
flyer.
I think,
The one I made up.
yes, yeah, I think that's good.
Mr. Chairman, we were talking at our last meeting about Ryan as the assistant, or as the secretary, and his payment and how he would get paid, and I realize we don't have any money, but at some point Ryan would want to get, he's doing this all for free. I was just wondering if you want to have a discussion on now is adopting him as our administrative assistant, if you, or is it too late in the meeting? You want to
No,
postpone it?
that's good discussion. I've actually been thinking about it myself. So We
thought we
voted
did.
to,
Do that, but we just
I
don't.
thought we don't,
it's a timing of the payment.
yeah,
Well, I mean,
we did discuss paying him.
So he's working for free until we
Well-
get that money?
We voted on $5,000 annually for the time being, so.
So what is the annual, what is, from when to when, what is his annual, from September? Is gonna be his annual.
I'm sure if I should talk to personnel, maybe too.
Yeah, if you would, maybe one of us should, yeah. So his annual would be from September to August.
Here, here.
He's,
Yeah.
and Ryan, will you just reach out to personnel and maybe and I can talk to him a little bit myself? Okay.
So it opens a broader discussion. I don't want to spend an hour talking about it, but in 5 minutes, can we talk about, I'm confused about, I thought we had made a request to the mayor for some funding for upfront to start up administrative costs until
We did. It's been referred to the City Council Finance Committee, and that's what we're going to hopefully push by the next meeting that we have. For that and for our budget to be approved when they set the tax rates, we have two things pending at the City Council. So if the mayor and they all agree, then we'll have our $10,000 and
Right, and
get us started.
make sure Todd McGee knows that we need to have that budget approved because we won't be able to do anything next year.
I will reach out to Mr. McGee tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Anything else for general discussion?
Our next meeting, if it is in 2 weeks, would be on a holiday, and then the following Monday's another holiday.
That wouldn't work.
So
We should just determine whether or not it's a different evening.
yeah, I was originally leaning towards waiting until our January meeting for the next meeting because of this time of the year, if everybody's in favor. Flyer, and we have to ensure the city council addresses our matters.
So we could authorize somebody to approve the language for the flyer, correct?
Well, I'm just gonna wait for the confirmed version of it, and then I'm gonna translate it.
So whatever you guys come up with, you can just forward to the treasurer or the assessor.
So do we make a motion to pre-approve the language that they determined for the flyer?
Seconded. Any
Perfect.
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Mike?
I'm just curious if anybody at the table has had anybody approach them, groups that might be coming forward soon with projects, if anybody had heard of anything in the wings or out there.
Yes and no. And a number of people have, asked me when it would be appropriate to start approaching us for funding. And I have told them all, there's no point in talking to us yet. It's going to be 6 months before we have either any money or a plan. Interestingly, though, the two proposals before us for help putting together our master plan both envision reaching out and trying to start pre-identifying the groups that are out there.
Mr. Chairman, do we know regarding the timetable of whoever gets hired to do this job? Do we have any kind of a timetable on who's going to make this selection and when?
For the
The
plan.
RFP for the plan?
I'll know more after this Thursday's Conservation Commission meeting, but I could reach out before then, but I know it's on our agenda for Thursday to talk about that, so that's all I know.
Yeah, I think there will be discussions taking place in various city offices this week. Whether we're going to be invited to participate in all of them, I don't know yet. But I know, both Alicia and Andrew have been putting a lot of time into getting this running, and I know that they want to make a decision and reach out and try to hire somebody very shortly.
Who's making the decision on what group is going to be hired?
Did you miss the meeting for the
I'm sorry.
RFP?
I'm sorry, I
Do you
did,
have a
so-
copy of the RFP?
Too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, it's not long.
If the
It's-
horses left the barn, but
No, but it's important to read it because it's a good,
It's,
it's good information.
Alicia, I don't know her title.
Alicia
Zola,
Zoller, she's
CPG.
the head of Community Development Block Grant, Community Development Office.
For the city, and then Andrew Smith with the Conservation Commission.
Yeah,
He's
it's
a,
the Community Development.
yeah, yeah.
sorry, my apologies.
So we reviewed that and approved it, and they went
Yeah,
out.
we did that.
And I
it's
guess
out.
that's Pioneer Valley Planning Association and,
Yeah,
PV,
yeah.
yeah.
Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and a group out of Boston whose full name I keep forgetting, but whose initials are COG, both responded and both have very solid-looking proposals.
Any further discussion? Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Happy holidays, everybody.
thank you, you too.